This is a story I haven't thought about in a long time, and for good reason. My friends and I used to love exploring abandoned places. Growing up in New Jersey, there were plenty of them within driving distance, enough to keep us entertained for hours. Most of the time, what we found wasn't anything special, just decaying buildings, empty warehouses, and broken down factories. But every now and then, we'd stumble across something different. One place that had been on our radar for a while was an abandoned middle school, about a 30-minute drive away. I won't mention the name for privacy reasons, but if you're familiar with North Jersey urban exploring, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. We'd seen photos of the place online, and one evening we decided it was finally time to check it out. It was late summer, and we were getting bored of our usual routine, playing basketball in my backyard or driving around aimlessly. I can't remember who brought up the idea, but it was pretty spontaneous. There were 4 of us that night: me, Yuri, Frank, and Freddie. Frank and I were into graffiti, so we brought a few cans of black and white spray paint. I also packed some leftover Roman candles from the 4th of July. That was kind of our thing. Explore the place, get to the roof, light off some fireworks, then leave before anyone showed up. Simple, harmless fun. Yuri was driving that night. He parked on a side street a few blocks away, and we made our way toward the school. The fence around the property had already been cut. Lucky us. We were ready to climb, but it looked like we wouldn't have to. The school was massive, much bigger than the photos had shown. Exploring the entire place would have taken hours, which honestly wasn't a bad thing, considering how quickly we got bored. Frank led the way through the gap in the fence, followed by Yuri, then me, and finally Freddie, who insisted on taking up the rear. He was the fearless one. We found a side door that wasn't boarded up and stepped inside. Even with our flashlights, the place felt eerie. Picture your old middle school, but completely silent. Every hallway stripped down to bare wires and cracked tiles. Insulation hung from the ceiling like cobwebs, and broken desks and chairs were scattered everywhere. The entrance led into a long hallway, and as we turned on our flashlights, the beams sliced through the dark. We were proud of those lights, ridiculously powerful ones that could flood an entire room. Mine cost $60, which was a lot for a flashlight back then, but worth every penny. The walls were covered in graffiti. Some pieces were incredible. Others looked like they were done by kids. Frank and I paused to admire a few tags, then kept moving. I'll spare you the smaller details, but the building was fascinating, like walking through a decaying time capsule. The auditorium still had rows of seats and a stage that was collapsing in on itself. We made a quick trip through the basement, the most run-down part of the school. We didn't stay long down there, not because of the rot, but because everyone was getting uneasy. One of the rooms had a large symbol painted on the floor. Creepy, yeah, but not uncommon. Anyone who's done urban exploring knows those pop up everywhere. We didn't linger. Eventually, we made our way to the 2nd floor. One of the classrooms had an untouched white wall, a perfect blank canvas. Frank and I grinned at each other and started throwing up some paint, while Yuri and Freddie decided to keep exploring and look for a way to the roof. They disappeared down the hallway, and we stayed behind. When we finished our piece, Frank wanted to start another section, but I got bored, and wandered off to check out some of the better graffiti nearby. I must have been gone 5 minutes when I heard Frank shout my name. He sounded frustrated. He asked if I was messing with him. I told him I wasn't. He snapped back, "Don't play dumb. I know you took my bag." I swore I didn't touch it, that I'd been standing in the hallway the whole time. After a moment, he believed me and muttered something about how it must have been Freddie. Honestly, it wouldn't have surprised me. That kind of prank was right up Freddie's alley. We searched the room, but the bag was gone. All the spare paint had been in there, so there wasn't much point in sticking around. We decided to find Yuri and Freddie, who we assumed were already on the roof. We climbed as high as we could, but the stairs didn't reach the roof. Wandering down another hallway, I stepped into a small side room and froze. On the wall was another strange symbol. Unlike the one in the basement, this one was fresh. The paint was still dripping, and in the corner was Frank's missing bag. Frank came up behind me, saw what I was staring at, and immediately grabbed his bag. He muttered, loud enough for the empty room to echo, "What's going on with them?" I didn't respond. Even as a joke, it felt too far, too strange. We left in silence, hoping to find our friends and get out. That's when we heard it. Footsteps. Fast ones. Yuri and Freddie came sprinting around the corner, waving for us to follow. No explanation. Just run. And that's exactly what we did. Here's a rule worth remembering. If someone tells you to run, you don't stand around asking questions. We tore through the halls. Yuri was shouting something, but I couldn't make out a word over the sound of our sneakers slamming the tile. All I gathered was that we weren't alone. Someone, or multiple people, were behind us. The school turned into a maze. We twisted and turned until we reached a corner and stopped to catch our breath. It was silent again, except for the sound of us panting. We agreed to head down any stairwell we could find. If we kept going down, we'd eventually reach an exit. After a few turns, we found one and descended carefully. When we hit what felt like the ground floor, we slowed down, thinking maybe we were finally in the clear. Then we heard it, a sharp, steady hissing sound from somewhere ahead of us, like someone trying to mimic a cat. We froze. As we started backing away, a deep voice called out from the darkness, "You shouldn't have come here." We didn't wait another second. We ran, harder than before. This time, we could actually hear footsteps behind us, several of them. Whoever they were shouting, telling us not to leave, saying we weren't supposed to be there. It was the most terrifying moment of my life. But somehow, Yuri made the right turn, and there, up ahead, was the door we'd come through. We didn't stop running, not even after we were outside. We didn't stop until we were through the fence and all the way back to Yuri's car. Yuri jumped behind the wheel and we sped off. Even as we drove away, all of us kept looking back at that building, but in the darkness, there wasn't much we could see, not that we wanted to. Once we were far enough away, Freddie finally spoke. His voice was shaking. He said that after they couldn't find a way to the roof, he and Yuri went down a floor to look for us. That's when Freddie heard a strange metallic clinking coming from one of the classrooms, like something tapping against glass or metal. He thought it might have been us messing around, so they went to check it out. When they stepped inside, they froze. There were 3 cloaked figures sitting in a circle, hunched over something on the floor. Freddie said it looked like they were playing some kind of ritual-style game with marbles or stones, but the second they noticed him, the figures stood up suddenly and started moving quickly toward them. Yuri and Freddie bolted upstairs, trying to lose whoever was following them. That's when they found us and why they told us to run without asking questions. Even after hearing the story, so much of it didn't make sense. If those people really wanted to scare us, why take Frank's bag? Why go through all that trouble? Freddie's theory was that whoever they were thought we'd never find our way out, that they wanted to mess with us a bit first. Yuri had another theory. He thought the room with the freshly painted symbol was where they planned to meet. Maybe for something symbolic, maybe for a performance or ritual practice. I wasn't convinced. I thought they hadn't been chasing us at all. Maybe they'd gone downstairs to block the exits, thinking we'd try to leave. But the one thing that really bothered me was the math. Freddie and Yuri saw 3 people upstairs. Frank's bag had been taken before that, meaning there had to be at least 4. We never went back. As far as I know, that building still stands, rotting away somewhere in North Jersey. That happened about 5 years ago. And while I wish I could say it was the last unsettling experience I ever had, it wasn't. Since no delivery apps covered that area, you had to call places directly and hope they were willing to drive out that far. A little after 10, my doorbell rang. I remember thinking, wow, that was fast. I walked to the front door and peeked through the peephole. A man was standing there, hoodie, jeans, hands in his pockets, but something felt off. He wasn't holding any food. No bag, no receipt, nothing that looked like a delivery. I should have realized right away, but my brain was running on fumes. Against my better judgment, I cracked the door open just slightly, keeping the chain locked. I asked if he was from the restaurant. He hesitated, then nodded. He said something about wanting to double-check the order before grabbing it from his car. That's when my instincts kicked in. I told him calmly, if you don't have the food with you, I'll need to call this in. He didn't argue. He mumbled something under his breath, turned around, and walked down the driveway, disappearing into the darkness. I stood there, unsure what to do. Finally, I closed the door, locked it, and called the restaurant. The manager answered. I explained what happened, and his response made my stomach drop. He said the driver hadn't even left yet. Whoever that man was, he wasn't delivering anything. He was just pretending. I called the non-emergency police line, gave them the details, and they logged the report. It wasn't enough for an immediate response, but at least it was documented. About 20 minutes later, the real delivery driver arrived. I paid for the food, took it inside, and tried to calm down. Around 11:30, I was sitting in the living room, lights off, TV playing quietly, when I heard it. A faint scraping sound. It was coming from the back of the house. I muted the TV and froze. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. For a few seconds, everything went silent. And then the sound started again. This time, I could tell exactly where it was coming from. The back door. The doorknob shifted slightly, like someone was testing it. Without another thought, I quietly called emergency services and explained what was happening. My hands were trembling. I went to my room, locked the door, and stayed as quiet as possible. After what felt like forever, maybe 15 minutes, an officer finally announced himself at the front door. I rushed to let him in. The police searched my house and the surrounding area. No one was in sight, but one of the officers noticed something near the back door. Small marks around the lock, as if someone had tried to tamper with it. I gave them my statement and mentioned the earlier incident. They told me patrols would be increased for a while, but beyond that, there wasn't much they could do. That answer didn't sit right with me, but I had to accept it and move on. I'd be lying if I said I slept soundly after that. Still, the next few nights passed quietly. I told myself there was no way that person would come back after the police got involved. And for a while, they didn't, until a few nights later. I woke up sometime after midnight to sirens, loud echoing sirens that rattled me awake. I went to the window just in time to see 3 police cruisers fly past my house, lights flashing. I told myself it had nothing to do with me, probably some situation nearby. I went back to bed, but not 20 minutes later, I woke again to knocking, firm, steady knocking at my front door. Groggy and confused, I got up, walked to the door, and checked the peephole. 2 uniformed officers stood on my porch. When I opened the door, one of them asked if I recognized someone they had just detained a few streets over. He held up his phone and showed me a photo. It was the same man from before, the one who had pretended to be a delivery driver. I could barely speak as I confirmed it. Apparently, he'd just been caught attempting to enter someone else's home nearby. The officers said they figured there might be a connection to my earlier call. They assured me I wouldn't have to worry about him anymore. I thanked them sincerely. That was the last I ever heard about it. They never followed up, and I never asked. I just wanted to move on with my life. Not long after I did, I moved out of that house, mostly because the isolation had started to wear on me. This next part happened just a few weeks ago, and I haven't stopped thinking about it since. My name's Catherine, and I'm a 24-year-old law student about to start my 2nd year at NYU. For anyone unfamiliar, first year is brutal. I barely slept 4 hours a night from September to May. So, when summer finally rolled around, I promised myself I'd actually enjoy it. That meant going out a lot, especially on weekends. I decided to stay home for the summer for a few reasons. Cheaper rent, old friends nearby, and honestly, it just felt comforting, like hitting reset.